Hey everyone, David Aragona here, and welcome to the September 21st edition of Horses to Watch, where we carefully analyze trips from the past week, looking for horses that encountered adversity and could be worth betting back when they run back in the future. Well, the Saratoga season is over, and we move on to Belmont at the Big A, or as has been historically known, just Aqueduct. And I'm happy we're moving back to Aqueduct because the dirt course tends to play pretty fairly at this time of the year. We don't have those big temperature swings like we typically encounter in the wintertime that sometimes create track biases. The turf courses at Aqueduct produce some trips that are worth talking about, especially that inner turf course with some of the 2-year-olds racing over it. The tight turns produce some wide trips, some horses that get a little bit ranked. So we're going to talk about all of those situations on this episode of Horses to Watch. And we're actually going to begin with a race for the 2-year-olds from last Thursday, September 15th. It's race 6, a New York bred maiden special weight race going a mile and a 16th on the turf for the 2-year-old fillies. Let's break these runners from the gate, and I want to focus on the number 5, Burnt Again. And you can see she breaks from the middle portion of the field and is getting a bit of a hustling ride from Jose Ortiz, trying to go forward to get into a stalking position in behind the winner. But you're going to see something strange starts to happen right here as Jose just stops being aggressive once this filly gets basically a little pushed out of that position. And he's just going to allow her to steadily drop back through the pack. And remember, she was right up in that position behind the leader, maybe a length off the front runner, about a furlong out of the gate. And now heading into this first turn, you can see she's dropped all the way back about 8 lengths off the lead. And he's going to continue to allow her to drop farther and farther back in the pack to the point where I think at one point she's 10th of the 12 runners in this race. Just kind of an odd situation where he's not aggressive at all and trying to hold position on this horse. The horse that actually ends up winning the race just went by her, that gray horse, the number 3. But I want to focus on Burnt Again because she is a third-time starter in this race. Didn't do much running in her debut, but she actually run a lot better than it seems in her second start at Saratoga when she was wide on the inner turf course during that 2-week period when the rail was really the place to be. She ran a lot better than her finish position would indicate in that second start of her career. Now coming back for this third start, and you can see the situation continue to develop. Jose Ortiz just let another horse go past him. He is not asking this filly for any run at all as they come to the top of the stretch here. And once they straighten away into the lane, you can see he finally starts to shake the reins at her a little bit, and she's actually going to start responding to that encouragement, trying to pass horses along the inside. But the race is collapsing a little bit in front of her, and you're going to see that she just runs into some traffic right about here as he angles her back towards to the inside, running into the back of a tiring runner in front of her, has to alter course around that foe. And you can see at no point did he really set this filly down to ask her for her best. She just kind of gallops in across the wire. Not really sure what the story was here, but I think she ran a deceptively much better 6th place than the result is going to indicate, or how it's going to look in the running line when it gets published the next time that she runs. Just a horse that I think has run a little bit better than it seems in each of her last 2 races. Might be able to take a big step forward at this level next time at what figures to be a pretty big price. Let's move on to a race from Friday, September 16th. It was the first race of the day, a maiden special weight event for open company 2-year-olds going 6 furlongs. Let's break these runners from the gate, and kind of like we typically see at Belmont at this time of year, this is a pretty high quality 2-year-old maiden race with plenty of appealing pedigrees. And the one that I want to focus on is the number 4, Signator. And you can see that gray horse breaks about a half step slowly, a little bit towards the back of the pack, getting hustled into the race there by Joel Rosario. But this son of Tapit just didn't possess that much early speed. He ends up settling in mid-pack, and it's not so much a bad trip that this horse gets. I just want to highlight him because I think he did some nice running going the 6 furlong distance, which probably is not ultimately going to be his best trip. This race gets won by the number 6 Quick Hammer, a Brad Cox trained first-time starter who just seemed pretty well meant in his debut, was one that had been training well up in Saratoga, and you can see he's getting a hustling ride to go after the leader right now. At this point in time, it looks like the number 4 Signator just kind of spinning his wheels, taking that kickback in behind, not really going anywhere. But watch this horse's action as Joel Rosario angles him out into the clear. Right about here, he's going to switch over from his left to right lead, and just watch him level off. He really lowers his head and is finishing really strongly. You can see him just stretching his body out as he goes after that eventual leader, that eventual winner, and gets within about a length and a half of that horse as they come onto the wire here. He's really running after that horse in a race that did not go to the closers. And if you watch this race further into the gallop out, he goes right on by Quick Hammer, galloping out nicely into the clubhouse turn. This son of Tapit cost $1.7 million at auction earlier this year at a 2-year-old sale. He's got a nice pedigree, obviously by Tapit, but the dam side, it's a Phipps family. The dam is out of Furlow, who is a good multiple graded stakes winning horse for the Phipps family. So I think this one is really going to appreciate some added ground and could develop nicely for Shug McGahee, a trainer that is certainly familiar with the female side of this family for Signator. Let's move on to a race from later in that Friday, September 16th card. It was a race 4, a maiden special weight event for the fillies and mares, older horses, going 6 furlongs on the outer turf course. Let's break these runners from the gate, and I want to focus on the number 3, Western Lane. And you can see she breaks pretty poorly here. She breaks slowly, but also when you watch the head-on, the horse right to her inside slams into her coming out of the starting gate, and that's just the double whammy that puts her towards the back of the pack early. Not where you wanted to be in a race that was wired on the front end. The eventual winner is the number 6, Glitter Up, and she's allowed to set some pretty moderate fractions for her in this race. It's not a race that really favors closers at all. So you do want to note the performance of this number 3, Western Lane, because she's going to make up quite a bit of ground, especially given that poor start that she had. Does some nice running within the middle of the race. This filly was making her the second start of her career, first off a trainer switch and private purchase to Natalia Lynch. She actually is a Juddmonte homebred that was initially with Brad Cox, made her first start for that barn, and now is with new connections going out for Natalia Lynch. And you could see right there at the top of the stretch, she had to alter course. Her rider, Kendra Carmouche, was trying to angle her outside of horses to make the run, ran into a bit of traffic, had to angle back towards the inside. Typically, that's not the kind of move you want to make on a horse that's trying to make up ground, especially an inexperienced filly like this. But you could see she's finishing best of all across the wire here, quickly making up ground along the inside, lost this race by just under 3 lengths, galloped out pretty well. I think this horse ran deceptively well within the context of this race, given the race dynamics, and she's one that could do better and develop nicely for Natalia Lynch, who does a pretty good job with her small string of runners. Let's talk about one more race from later in last week at Belmont at the Big A, race on Sunday, September 18th. This was race 3 on that Sunday card, a maiden special weight event going a mile on the inner turf course for fillies and mares. Let's break these runners from the gate, and I want to focus on the number 2, Rosia Bay. You can see she breaks pretty well here with the field, and her rider, Javier Castellano, shakes the reins at her a couple times to try to get her forward. Doesn't quite work, and she's going to clip heels right there, you could see, as the field kind of came over on themselves coming into the clubhouse turn. She just had to basically back out of that position. And you could see after getting a little bit upset by that, she gets pretty rank under Javier. And right here, you can see he has to strongly tap on the brakes as she is running right up on the heels of the horses in front of her, has to veer out, causes problems to the runners to the outside. And even after that incident, you can see she's still too rank. Javier is leaning back in the stirrups. There she is trying to run up on heels once again, throwing her head up and down. She is pretty upset at this point in the race, responding pretty poorly to those rating tactics. And it's just going to get worse from here as the number 7, Kinchin, is going to range up inside of her, which is putting her between horses, the spot that you don't want to be in for a filly that's getting rank underneath of you. So Javier was just kind of between a rock and a hard place right from the start. And you can see his body, he's kind of bouncing up and down in the stirrups. That's also sometimes indicative of the rider whose saddle is slipping forward a little bit. So just felt like he didn't have full control over this filly at any point in the race. Do note, this was the first start in blinkers for Rosia Bay, and I wouldn't be surprised if those blinkers come off the next time that she runs, because it just seemed like they upset her right from the start. She was too keen wearing them, and now they get into the stretch here, and she's basically out of position, no chance to be competitive, but she's actually going to do some decent running through the lane to pass a couple of tired rivals, getting up into 5th here. Again, not competitive with the top 3 runners, but she does do a little bit of finishing after fighting her rider so aggressively in the beginning of that race. This was a third-time starter for trainer Cherie DeVoe. I thought she had run deceptively well in her start just prior to this back in June at Belmont Park, had done some running in spots that day, had dropped back on the far turn, ran the fastest final 8th of anybody when she was kind of doing some nice running after the race was over that day. I think this filly has more ability than she's shown in any of her races thus far. I guess Cherie DeVaux was hoping that the blinkers would give her the needed focus in this race. That didn't quite work out as she kind of went over the edge with getting too aggressive in them. I do think, though, that she's going to benefit from these experiences, and she's one that can do better when she races back next time out, hopefully in New York again. So we get to wager on her over this same course. So those were all the horses to watch for this week at Aqueduct or Belmont at the Big A. If you want to follow these horses moving forward, you can add them to your horse watch on DRF.com. Just add them to a list, and you'll get email notifications when these horses run back in the future. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Horses to Watch, and make sure to catch future episodes on upcoming Wednesdays.